An affair with a much younger man was just harmless fun to Sarah. She'd enjoyed many affairs before. But to 25-year-old Connor, he was head over heels, and he saw Sarah's husband Andrew as the obstacle to their future together. But one night, all were in the same bar, with terrible consequences. Today's story comes from Richmond in North Yorkshire. It's about 60 miles north of Leeds, the home of world football. From the age of 5, Andrew Jackson loved playing football. But one weekend, when visiting family in Richmond, he went to play golf with his uncle. And after just a couple of swings, he was totally in love with the sport of golf. Football took a back seat. And he was good. He had a real flair for the sport. And for the next 32 years of his life, golf was the most important thing for him. He was employed as an assistant professional at Richmond Golf Club for a year, and then played on the professional circuit for a couple of years. But lack of funds meant he couldn't pursue this career. It's a real tough environment, and only the very best are able to sustain any sort of living on the pro golf tour. During this period, Andrew was married, and with his wife, he ran a pub until their divorce. After this bigger life shift, he found alternative work as an HGV lorry driver, and at this time, he began internet dating. Now, Andrew was a good looking guy with bags of charisma, and he wasn't short of interest. Then in 2006, he met Sarah. She was a classically attractive account administrator for a car dealership. She loved his company as much as he enjoyed hers, and they very quickly spent all their spare time together. Within weeks, he was making plans for Sarah and her 2 young sons to move from Wakefield in West Yorkshire to live with him in Richmond. And they soon moved from Andrew's house to a home of their own nearby, and they married in 2010. One of their neighbours was Caroline, and she and Sarah became firm friends. Caroline's son, Connor, then 15, would babysit Sarah's children when Sarah went out. And even though he was just 15, he developed a major crush on Sarah. And he wasn't the only one. And this caused major issues in Andrew and Sarah's marriage, as Sarah couldn't stop reacting to male attention, and she was regularly unfaithful to Andrew. On one occasion, this caused them to temporarily separate when Sarah confessed all about an affair to Andrew. But Andrew, he still adored Sarah, and to him, she was his ideal woman. He loved her, and he couldn't see any bad in her at all. But still, the affairs continued. Let's forward wind to 2015, and the boy he used to babysit for Sarah, Connor Coleman, had grown up. He now joined the same gym as Sarah and his mum Caroline, and he spent some time with the 2 women working out and playing badminton. But his interest in Sarah extended beyond sport, and she made no secret of the fact that she liked the look of the fit young man, almost 15 years younger than her. And it was the start of April 2015 that the pair started a secret sexual relationship. Although to Sarah it was a meaningless fling with a good looking younger man, to Connor it took on much more significance. He boasted to his mates about his affair with Sarah Jackson. He believed that he and Sarah would move in together. She'd indicated as much to him, or so he thought. And with a large ego, he made grandiose claims about the relationship to his pals. He told them how ever since he babysat for her children he had a crush on her, and how during badminton games, friendly banter turned into flirty bonding. And this wasn't helped as Sarah hadn't been very truthful with him. She told him she was divorced, and her and Andrew were just together for financial reasons. But even in just the first few weeks of the affair, there were tensions. It was April the 18th when both were at a club in town with different sets of friends, when Sarah kissed another man in front of him. Connor couldn't believe what he was seeing. He stood by the bar just watching, transfixed. That night he punched a pillar in the bar and then went downstairs and rained punches on the door as he took out his frustration at what had been happening. Then a week later, on the 25th of April, a number of worlds collided. Connor and a group of his friends were out in Richmond, as was Andrew Jackson with some of his friends, as was Sarah with her mates. And later in the evening, all of them found themselves in the popular Cavern Club. Sarah was chatting and flirting with a different man, actually the partner of one of her friends. And shortly after 11 p.m., she walked hand in hand with this man out of the main bar to a small room outside the toilets where they were getting very, what should we say? They were getting very close and intimate. Meanwhile, both her lover Connor and her husband Andrew were also in the main bar. It was never going to end well. Shortly afterwards, Andrew Jackson walked past Sarah and this other man on his way to the bathrooms. He clearly noticed them and took a look, but he didn't say anything and just walked past on his way. Then Connor came into the same area twice, and the first time he timidly looked at the pair, but the second time he couldn't control his jealousy. He approached the man and confronted him in an aggressive manner. Staff saw this confrontation between Connor and the other man, and Connor was thrown out. Sarah followed Connor as he was ejected, with both of them walking straight past her husband in the main bar without speaking or acknowledging him. Andrew watched them leave, and then he raised two fingers to his friends as if to say, "I'll be back in a couple of minutes," and he followed them outside. This decision to follow Connor and his wife out of the pub proved to be a significant one for Andrew, as Connor attacked Andrew when he saw him leave the bar. This attack was witnessed by Andrew's wife, who was right there, and other people nearby. One witness who saw Connor hit Andrew 4 or 5 times later said it reminded him of watching cage fighting. It was so ferocious. He said that Connor was leaning over Andrew using his body weight and the full extension of his arm to drive punches into his head, and he could see Andrew's head moving with each blow. As he attacked him, Connor was aggressively shouting words to the effect of, "You're not such a big man now." And finally, as Andrew lay motionless on the ground, the brutal beating stopped. But get this, as her husband lay unconscious and bleeding on the floor outside the pub, rather than tend to Andrew, Sarah walked away arm in arm with Connor, whose knuckles were actually dripping with Andrew's blood. Andrew, meanwhile, was in a seriously bad way. He wasn't breathing. His heart had actually stopped, and paramedics were called and raced to the scene, and they desperately worked on Andrew to restart his breathing, and they rushed him to hospital. Andrew's sister, Sally, and her 69-year-old mum, Rosemary, kept a vigil at his bedside. And when his wife, Sarah, wanted to come to the hospital with her boys, they said no, they didn't want her there. Andrew never regained consciousness, and 2 days later, his distraught family had to make the heartbreaking decision to turn off the life support machine. Andrew Jackson was just 43 years old when he died. A post-mortem examination showed numerous injuries to Andrew's head and face and concluded the principal cause of death was a bleed to the brain. He also had fractures above his eyes and a traumatic tear to an artery in the base of his skull. Sarah, his wife, paid a glowing tribute to her husband, which infuriated Andrew's family and friends, who firmly held her responsible for what had happened. Cleared of blame by the police, Sarah headed the mourners at Andrew's funeral. But Andrew's sister Sally later told how the family all stayed well clear of Sarah at the funeral, saying that people were sitting in chairs at the very, very back rather than sitting anywhere near her. Connor was arrested and showed no emotion at all about Andrew's death, but he did become upset when questioned about Sarah's behaviour with the other man that night. He told police, "I felt like a mug, like an idiot, like I'd been used." In court, Connor Coleman admitted the manslaughter of Andrew Jackson but pleaded not guilty to murder. The prosecuting QC outlined that their case was that Coleman's attack on Andrew Jackson was entirely unwarranted and gratuitous. He said that Coleman was angry and aggressive and frustrated by his problems in his relationship with Sarah. He took out those frustrations on a man who he saw as one of the obstacles to that relationship and who had the misfortune to cross his path at the wrong time. The nature of the attack he carried out made it clear that he fully intended to cause serious harm to Andrew. Sarah Jackson gave evidence at the trial. She said of her fling with Connor Coleman, it wasn't a meaningful, loving relationship. She told the jury that her memory of the night was patchy because of how much she's had to drink. The barrister then said to her, You were snogging a bloke in the bar, were you not? You did it in front of Connor Coleman, who you were having an affair with, she replied. I was talking to him. I cannot remember kissing him. When asked what she saw, she said, I'm not sure if he was kicking or punching Andrew. I remember following Connor. He was angry, really full of himself, like he thought he was big and tough. The QC asked Sarah, You remember all this, but not your husband being on the ground? She replied, Yes. It was revealed that a week before Andrew was killed, his wife brought Connor back to the family home. As Sarah Jackson heated food and made drinks in the kitchen, her husband and lover were left alone in the living room. On that occasion, the two men had words, and Connor left the house in fury and later said that he wanted to knock out his love rival. This, said the prosecution, is why Connor had shouted at him about not being the big man as he attacked Andrew. Asked whether she told Connor that her marriage was over, Sarah told the court, No, I didn't know what was happening to my marriage. We had various issues, and we decided that on the coming Sunday night that we were going to sit and talk about where we wanted to be. Giving evidence, Connor told the court he was only defending himself after being attacked by Andrew. He said he was devastated for what happened, he felt like an idiot, and had been used by Sarah. But he insisted that Andrew had attacked him first and his actions were purely self-defense. The jury took 5 hours in total to return a not guilty plea on the charge of murder and to find Connor Coleman guilty of manslaughter. For this, the judge jailed him for 6 years and 9 months. There was sobbing from the public gallery, but no visible reaction from Connor. The judge said how Andrew Jackson was a thoroughly decent man. There had been strains in his marriage, but he was dealing with those with dignity and calmness. He then looked at Connor and told him, You are not so calm and are a thoroughly selfish, immature individual. He continued, Andrew Jackson was in no way a threat to you. I do not believe your claim that he came at you. The judge said that Coleman had shown little or no remorse for his actions. Andrew Jackson's family, speaking outside court, described the sentence, not even 7 years, handed down to his killer as too short. I wonder if you agree with that. His sister Sally said, Andrew's life was taken from us far too soon. As a family, how do we come to terms with that loss, knowing we will never see him for another birthday, another Christmas, or any other family occasion? She also said the family disagreed with the judge's assertion that no blame should be attached to Sarah Jackson, adding, As a family, we ultimately believe that his wife's actions led to the tragic death of Andrew. So there we have it. Our sympathies are, of course, with the family and friends of Andrew, who lost his life in such terrible circumstances on that awful night. We need to remember what the judge said, that despite how we may feel about the behaviour of Sarah, it was Connor Coleman and his violence that led to the death of Andrew Jackson. And of course, every chance now that Connor Coleman is a free person in his late 20s or early 30s. You can understand the frustration of the family. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope you found it of interest. Please do watch one of my others. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.